This is Ian R. Crane, and it's the morning of Friday, the 4th of January, 2019. And I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome the increasing audience that these morning live streams are getting from overseas. And please do leave a comment below if you're watching this from somewhere other than the UK. But I know that we get an increasing number of people watching from the US, from Canada, from Australia, and from mainland Europe. And I'm getting a lot of messages suggesting that the EU is maybe facing the most significant crisis. It seems that what has occurred, or not occurred yet, with Brexit and with the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests in France, is inspiring people right across the world. And people are beginning to realize that, unless they actually take the opportunity to participate in what's occurring within the global economic political arena, then basically they are going to descend into increasing economic slavery. So, somebody just posted 12:30 here in California. Well, it's still obviously, no, it's just in the very early hours of the 4th of January there. So, welcome. Anyway, I'd also like to take an opportunity to thank those that have made a donation towards my running costs. And because, my activities are really only limited by time and available finances. So, as I posted last week, I think, then, a few weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, there was a lady sitting in front of a gold piano, which was rescued from the palace of Saddam Hussein, preaching about austerity and the country coming together. Well, she's funded by the taxpayer, but I am only funded by those who feel that what I do has some perhaps longer term benefit. So thank you very much, and if you do wish to make a donation, I will put a link beneath this video. Well, the title of this morning's broadcast is 2019, a year of high risk opportunity. And the risk is primarily associated with whether or not people actually get involved. And, we are seeing an increasing number of people getting involved. And the DroneGate incident at Gatwick was an absolute gift, occurring on the late hours of Thursday, December 20th, rolling through the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. And for 3 days, the British media and the British establishment and the Sussex police made complete idiots of themselves, so that even the most casual observer could see that basically here in the UK, a proverbial piss up in a brewery is extremely difficult to organise if anyone from the establishment is involved, because their whole ethos is about creating chaos. And this is very much the agenda that's driven by Common Purpose, this pseudo charity, this pseudo NGO that has worked with every government since 1988. Of course, it's headed up by Julia Middleton. And this is an organization that has effectively infiltrated and percolated its way through the British establishment and indeed British industry. And what it does is it's creating a parallel structure, effectively along the lines of the secret societies, such as, to some extent, Freemasonry, of course, but particularly in the US, the likes of Phi Beta Kappa, and Skull and Bones and Scroll and Keys, and of course here in the UK we have the Bullingdon Club. And don't think for 1 minute that once you're time at university has ended, that your relationship with these societies is over. They own you. You have sold your soul. And those who have been through the common purpose graduate scheme over the past 31 years have effectively pledged their loyalty to this parallel structure, this parallel hierarchy that is intent on bringing about absolute chaos, the introduction of cultural Marxism, and effectively creating a two-tier society, i.e. those that are pulling the strings, whether that be the political or the financial strings, and those who are effectively the slaves. So the whole idea of liberty in the eyes of the global corporatists is their ability to do whatever they need to do, to rape and pillage the natural resources of the planet, and to use the human resource simply as a commodity, to be used, abused, and discarded the moment they've served a useful purpose. And of course, this ethos has percolated its way through to the National Health Service, where basically anyone who has is effectively not making a direct contribution to the corporatocracy is effectively denied necessary treatment and effectively put on the euphemistically termed care pathway, which effectively means easing your journey into the next realm as smoothly and as quickly and as cost effectively as is possible. And only yesterday I read an article, and whilst obviously one can see that perhaps there is a constructive motivation, we can see that this is a thin end of a wedge. And this was the admission that the NHS are now trawling social media to look for clues as to whether somebody wants to attempt to remain on this mortal coil, or whether or not they would actually prefer to have life support switched off. And life support, of course, means food and water as well. And so, hypothetically, if somebody some years ago in a state of depression, posted on social media that in the event of them effectively being in a semi-vegetative state, they would want the life support systems switched off. And that, it seems, is now sufficient to enable the NHS decision makers, none of whom, of course, have any medical qualifications. They are purely and simply administrators managing the finances. And, ultimately, they will use that as a determination as to whether or not to make any attempt to keep somebody alive. So, the prognosis, of course, is not pretty if we keep going down this trajectory. So what can bring about a change in trajectory? Well, it's the participation of the wider population. And people surely now realize that, basically when you participate in an election, they want you crossing the box, and then they want you to just and leave them well alone, but so that they can just get on and do whatever it is that whoever is pulling their strings tells them to do. What they certainly do not want and find it very difficult to handle is community participation, i.e. communities that are effectively scrutinizing their every move and holding them to account. Now, hopefully come the end of March, there will no longer be any MEPs, so it will become increasingly difficult for the British political establishment to be doing this and just blaming everybody else. And of course the SNP, unfortunately, have been past masters at that. Rather than take the responsibilities they have, they keep passing the buck, saying, well, it's Europe, saying it's Westminster. Well, the whole purpose of the Brexit opportunity is to bring that responsibility back home, so that when you are talking to a politician, they cannot pass the buck to Europe or to the UN or anybody else. It is very much down to British politicians. And British politicians, instead of dancing to the tune of their corporatist paymasters, need to start dancing to the tune of those who elected them in the first instance. So the opportunity really is there. And like I said, the Gatwick drone gift has increased the number of people who are realizing that the media is simply a distraction. It is simply pumping out the agenda to try to keep the masses on track and in a state of effective fear. Now, somebody's just made an observation here that Brexit is a distraction. Well, it certainly is right now, because there's not enough participation by the wider community. And maybe it's going to take chaos, more chaos in Westminster, to actually get people to step up to the plate. And if there is any kind of retraction on the referendum decision, then 17.4 million people, and a hell of a lot of people who maybe voted for a remain in the EU, who have now realized that that was a mistake and that they had been misled by the cultural Marxists who want to ensure the destruction of the nation state. And of course, Angela Merkel has stated categorically, as has Macron, that basically nation states need to give up their sovereignty for the benefit of the creation of the European empire. And of course, the migration agenda and the signing of the treaty, the UN Treaty of Marrakesh on December the 11th, effectively, well, it's non-binding, but it effectively commits the signatories to open door migration. And of course, the deliberate point of that is to undermine the economies of those countries, and of course to undermine the indigenous homogeneity and destroy the culture of those countries. And the French have realized this big time, because French culture is still very much centered around local markets. People come together in the markets. They discuss what is going on when they're at the market. And eventually there was sufficient grassroots motivation to decide to do something about it. And although Eric Drouet, I gather, was arrested last night, who is allegedly one of the leaders of the Gilets Jaunes, as he has stated, there is no leadership within the Gilets Jaunes. It is a grassroots movement that now has a natural mobility. And this is, of course, exactly the model that the anti-fracking community has been built upon, which is why the anti-fracking campaign in the UK, and in particular, of course, in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, in Wales, and indeed, I must acknowledge as well, in the Republic of Ireland, why it's been so successful. Okay, in England, we still have some more work to do, but nonetheless, it is community-driven activism that has ensured that this industry has not yet got a foothold in the UK. So, this grassroots realization that participation can be beneficial. And if you sit back and just watch what is occurring, then unfortunately, the prognosis is not pretty. But my perception from my travels around the UK, from just talking with random people who have no idea who I am or what I do, and yet the recognition that basically chaos is the agenda, and the recognition that if people do just sit back and watch, then the chaos is going to get so much worse, and the only opportunity for any order from that chaos will come from those who have driven the chaos in the first instance. Problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialectic, absolutely in motion. Yet, as we collectively have proven now that once communities come together, once communities make a commitment to ensure that any change which affects them is going to benefit that community, and if not, they will oppose it with everything they have, then they realize that they can indeed be extremely effective. So this is a year of tremendous opportunity, and I hope that that opportunity continues to build. We'll see over the next 2 to 3 months, the trajectory of the year. But let me tell you right now that those who are attempting to bring about the global corporatocracy are not getting it all their own way by any stretch of the imagination. And of course, anyone who's following the financial markets will know that, basically the global financial arena is also very much on a knife edge. But this also is a tremendous opportunity. 10 years ago, or sorry, probably 15 years ago now, when I first started discussing fractional reserve banking, I would see people's eyes glaze over and it would be completely beyond their bounds of perception. But now, an increasing number of people are waking up to the realization of the magnitude of the financial fraud that has been perpetrated on the world, effectively, with the exception of a few countries who are also known as the axis of evil. So join the dots there. But this fraud of fractional reserve banking, where effectively the financial institutions have the responsibility for the issuance of currency and the opportunity then to charge interest on it. And any politician that has tried to change that has unfortunately met with a rather rapid demise. And, watch this space, because Donald Trump has already alluded to the observation that the fraud of the Federal Reserve is something that needs addressing. And we need to address that on a much broader basis. So, just in terms of the detail, well, still the biggest opportunity in England now is to end the fracking agenda once and for all. People are beginning to realize, and I think investors are beginning to realize that, this is very much a Ponzi scheme. And effectively, the likes of particularly Francis Egan should be held to account, just like his counterparts in Third Energy should have been held to account. These CEOs of these Ponzi scheme companies are effectively perpetrating a fraud and effectively paying themselves something in the region of about £500,000 a year in benefits and direct compensation. And they know very, very well by now that there is no possibility that they're going to ever get these industries established in the UK. England being the last place that there's any possibility at all. So as and when the lid is finally nailed shut on this industry, then hopefully there will still be the motivation to investigate the finances of these companies and just the realization of the fraud that has been perpetrated, not least on the shareholders, but also in terms of the taxpayer, because of all the financial support that has been provided from the political arena. So it's communities that have driven this. No NGO, no formal structure, no leadership. The model that has been adopted by the Gilets Jaunes in France, and the model that needs to grow throughout the world over the coming year and beyond, if we are to establish an order that is based upon the best interests of humanity and not the sociopathic greed of the global corporatists. So I know today is the last day of the 2-week holiday for the Christmas and New Year period, and people will actually get back into the office or whatever on Monday. But hopefully over that Christmas and New Year period, there's been an opportunity to reflect. There's been an opportunity to discuss some of these issues, with fellow family members and friends. And hopefully, come next week, we're going to see and be able to measure the increase in realization, awareness, and opposition to the global corporatist agenda. So thanks for all those who do join me, either at 8:30 in the morning or at any other time during the day. And of course, the key element to all this is sharing. And if you wish to share my videos, that's wonderful. But what's really important is that we never, ever underestimate the power of sowing seeds. You may not necessarily get an immediate reaction, but you know very, very well that the seed has been sown, and one day when you're not around to see it, but that seed will germinate and you will have made that contribution to bringing about the changes that we all know we need to see. So you have a great day, a great weekend, and I will be back with you on Monday morning at 8:30. You take care now.